Very welcome back. Now, a warning that our next item includes topics of a sensitive nature that some viewers may find distressing.
On the 29th of August 2016, devastating news hit the headlines all over the country of the murder of Jacqueline Connolly's sister, Clodagh, along with Clodag's sons, Liam, Niall and Ryan. In her new book, Jacqueline details critical failures in the initial Garda investigation, as well as unpublished findings of the recent Garda Serious Crime Review. And she joins us now to discuss. Good morning to you, Jacqueline. Thank you.
Good morning.
So much for coming in and talking to us. Before Alan came into Clodagh's life, can you tell us what was she like? What was your relationship with Clodagh like?
Well, growing up, we were very close as children. We lived in rural Ireland and countryside. There wasn't much around, there wasn't much to do in Cavan and Mount Nugent. Clonty Duffy is very rural. So we had our own ways of entertaining ourselves. There was no PlayStations or computers or technology. So we were very close as children.
Clodagh got her legs caught in cattle grates, it would appear.
Clodagh had a plaster cast up to her knee and she got stuck in a drain one day and there was cow muck up to her and I couldn't stop laughing. I can't even remember how that was fixed, but she was stuck in it. Yeah.
You just laughed at her as she was stuck in cow poo for hours.
Sister.
Very supportive sister. She was very young when Alan Hawe came into her life. Can you tell us about that and how Clodagh changed as you see it as a result?
I suppose when she went to college, she had a great social life and she used to socialise with her friends, and then she would regale stories about being in the big tree pub and Drumcondra and, you know, having leaf fights on the way home. And when she met him then, because he didn't drink, she stopped drinking then. She didn't... I don't ever really remember Clodagh being in a pub. I certainly never socialised with her in a pub. And as a person then, I could see that, you know, they were in a very committed relationship. It was very serious, very quickly. They got married very quickly, and then Liam arrived very soon after they were married.
He portrayed himself as a bit of a pillar of the community, maybe a facade that got involved in many items and areas in the community and seemed like a really good guy. A guy that whenever you initially met him that you liked, but there were warning signs then.
Well, back then, I don't know if we could see warning signs because coercive control or any type of domestic abuse wasn't really... We weren't really educated on it at that stage. So, really, I just thought he was very odd, very boring. I couldn't relate to him in any way. I suppose, as I talk about in Deadly Silence, I was always made feel I socialised too much. I had a very different life to them, so...
And when you say that, and I know that you're looking back with hindsight now, but for us, because we've all know friends in relationships who've gone on, you just don't see them anymore when they get into a relationship. For you, looking back now, what were the things where you were like, oh, that could have been controlling? What was he doing?
Well, I suppose when I talk about the wedding and dress shopping, for the bridesmaid dress shopping, when myself and Clodagh, and he was there and he wanted to come and essentially judge how a bridesmaid dress looked on me, and
he wanted to pick your bridesmaid dress, be involved in that,
and it was awful.
And it turned out that he was looking at your messages to your sister. He could look at her phone. You find out subsequently. Yeah,
well, the Serious Crime Review did establish that Clodagh was forwarding my messages to him, but that was an arrangement between them, and that comes from his insecurities. I don't know how that came about.
They were a quiet family. Clodagh was a teacher. They socialised amongst each other. 3 gorgeous boys from the age of 14 to 6. Can you take us to the day when you found out about your sister and your nephews?
I was in work in Dublin. I had left my son at creche, his first day at play school, and I came to work in Dublin, and I was working a couple of hours and somebody came to my office and asked me to leave and come to another room. And I thought initially, you know, I'd done something wrong in work, what was going on. It was a very quiet, long walk to this office. And I suppose then when we got to an office, the door opened and the CEO was there. And then a neighbour, her son, came to collect me. And it still didn't click with me that there was something wrong at home. And Leo, who was there to give me the news, said, "Your mum is fine, Gary's fine." And I said, "Who's dead?" And when he reamed all their names off, I just said, But that couldn't be possible. You can't, logically it wasn't possible. Clodagh travelled to school on her own. He travelled, as in Hawe, he travelled to school with the boys. So it wasn't possible in my head for them all to be dead.
Alan had murdered Clodagh, the three sons, Liam, Niall and Ryan. Were you made aware of this at the time?
No, not on the day. As everybody will know, that my mum, she travelled to the house on the morning of, because Clodagh was meant to drop the boys with her. And the note on the back door put there by Alan Hawe said, "Don't come in, call the Gardaí." So Mam knew it was his writing. She knew that something terrible had happened, but we didn't know that he had killed them all and then taken his own life.
And we don't have to go into it. You talk about it in the book as to how these four beautiful people were murdered. I think an awful lot of people can remember that.
Yeah.
It's gruesome and horrific. Did you know about it? You were then operating as a family as to how did all of these people die? You've got to make funeral arrangements.
Yeah.
So did you just know that they had been murdered by him and you're going along making funeral arrangements?
Yes, yeah. And we were very much put under pressure to make those funeral arrangements because the perpetrator was dead. It was nearly as if, well, let's just carry on now and let's arrange a funeral as though it's a normal funeral. And we were very much put under pressure to make funeral arrangements. And in that time, there was no time to think. And on top of that, the media, there's chaos with the media and they're looking for you and they're looking for an interview. You know, this is big news, whereas we're in the middle of it. We're alone. Myself and Mam were with my aunt and uncle and the rest of my family, hiding away, trying to make funeral arrangements on our own.
Alan, I know, was buried with Clodagh and the boys. Later you had his body exhumed. The police investigation then got underway. How frustrating was that?
Hugely frustrating. Myself and my mum were nearly investigators ourselves. We would have the family liaison officer come. We would get certain information. Did we ask questions? Did we know what A, B or C meant? From his counsellor notes maybe, and then we would be trying to find answers. It was very much a coroner-led investigation, but the why in the investigation wasn't accounted for, but it was accounted for then in the inquest with the state employing Harry Kennedy to give the why.
So you feel in this investigation, in reading the book, in the first one, that it was a case of, and I don't mean this in a callous way, but sure, they're dead and it's done. That's how it seems to you?
He was dead. The perpetrator was dead. So there was nobody to trial. There was no perpetrator. So it wasn't a criminal investigation. And the rigour of a criminal investigation wasn't applied. So he was gone. He wasn't going to have to answer for what he did.
And you want to know why he did this. And when that was brought up in the coroner's report, what did that say?
So in the coroner's inquest, Professor Harry Kennedy diagnosed Alan Hawe with depression and with psychosis based on his murder letter and his counsellor notes. So when we asked questions in January 2019 and we were told it's done now, that's when we were forced to go public with Claire Byrne.
So you went public and the public story got a hold of this. The Garda superintendent or commissioner, he's demanded a second review on this. It's taken 4.5 years.
Yes.
There's talk of seeing Alan on CCTV walking around potentially after he murdered Clodagh and the three boys. 4.5 years seems an awful long time. What is the situation at the moment?
So the situation in relation to the CCTV, that's one of the failings from the first investigation. So we were told that the CCTV in the area was checked. It wasn't checked. The Serious Crime Review team established it wasn't checked, and that information is gone forever now. The Serious Crime Review has shown so many failings from the first investigation, but it's also showing the changes that need to happen based on that information, and that information needs to be released by Garda Commissioner Drew Harris to prevent and protect women and children and prevent this from happening again. And it feeds into the National Third Strategy of Domestic Violence.
This is what you're fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that you've had a very good relationship with the Special Investigation Team the second time, that they have been very close with you and your mum, who we're thinking of right now, who's going through all of this over and over again. But your wish, if people are wondering why you're doing this, it's because what you want to help, you want to prevent this happening in the future. This was a family annihilation, and you want to stop that.
Yes, the Serious Crime Review indicates patterns, behaviours, and it shows timelines in what family annihilators look like. The public and the general public are entitled to know this information, and domestic violence services are entitled to know this information so they can advance their policies.
Because it looked like, when you look like now, it looked like it has been said an awful lot, and the salacious material that comes out, and I'm sure you were seeing it on your phones as these news flashers were coming up. There was, you know, charges of pornography in the murder letter, as you call it. Alan Hawe had said it's all going to come out, and that was kind of his motivation behind. That was his motivation, you feel, behind the murders.
Well, there's, I suppose, social death, because the Serious Crime Review does establish that his porn addiction went far further than the first investigation team could find out, and they had the technology there to do so. But in relation to why he did it, and it was all going to come out, that letter, that murder letter, was full of lies, and it was, as Professor David Wilson says, has given in the Serious Crime Review, there was pseudo-altruistic comments in that he was leading people to believe certain things even when he knew that he wouldn't be around to answer for them.
Making people think he was doing...
He was caring. It was an act of mercy.
An act of mercy to do this, rather than his children and his wife to live in this world.
And they would have lived, and they would have had wonderful lives.
What's your message to the Garda Commissioner now?
It's time to tell us, well, firstly, why he won't release them, because operational reasons is not a reason to keep that information to yourself when lives can be saved. And secondly, please release the findings. You and your family have been through so much. Your brother, Tig, died by suicide, as did your husband, Richie, when you were pregnant with your baby boy, Gary. And now you, to try to get some answers, you're doing this. You've been talking to Primetime, you've been talking to so many people. Pat Kenny. How are you doing talking about all of this again, bringing it all up, having people like us ask you these questions? How are you? It's difficult, I'm not going to lie. It's exhausting. But I have to say, I've written Deadly Silence because of so much loss, because of so much trauma. Somebody has to be helped from what I've gone through, what myself and my mum have been put through. The onus should never have been put on her and I to seek answers when we've a justice system in place. That's why that's written, because it is going to help somebody. It has to.
And Clodagh once said to you, don't ever be defined by what's happened to our family. An amazing message, but difficult to do when you can't get the truth out there. And
absolutely, and it does change you as a person, but it doesn't define me, definitely not. And I am so proud of Clodagh and the boys and Tig and Richie. And trauma is nothing to be ashamed of. Loss and grief is nothing to be ashamed of.
How's Gary?
Gary's great.
Is he great? And your mum?
Mum's okay.
She's okay?
She's coping,
It's a lot to go through.
It is.
I know you had a good experience, but you want as you've mentioned, you want the full findings of the second review to be released. The book is fascinating. It's heartbreaking. It really is, that you've opened up so much into the trauma that you've had in your life, your personal traumas, everything that you've gone through. It's called Deadly Silence, and it's a battle to get the truth, and it's keeping Clodagh and her boys and Richie and Tig alive. You've done a gorgeous job.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us this morning, Jacqueline. I really appreciate it. It's Jacqueline Connolly's book there.
Thanks so much.